1983 wasn't just the year that Flashdance premiered, it was the year our region hit rock bottom. The metro unemployment rate topped 18% and an exodus was underway, the diaspora that created the Steelers Nation. 30 years later, our region is back in the economic game and topping rankings for economic performance. So how are we doing? And I guess even more important, can it continue? Doug Hoyk is back with us. He's publisher of Pittsburgh Quarterly and director of PittsburghToday.org. Jim Futrell is Vice President of Market Research and Analysis for the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance, an affiliate of the Allegheny Conference, which co-produces this program. Welcome back to both of you. Good to see you.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Yeah, Jim, I'm going to start with you. I mentioned Flashdance. That's one of those red letter moments in 1983. But what else was going on that year that really marked why it was such a significant year for our region?
Well, I think looking in that prism of 30 years, it really was a scary time for this region. You were in a 21-month period where through March of 1983, 12% of the region's jobs disappeared. The year started out with Mesta Machine, which for a long time was a industrial stalwart in the Mon Valley, shutting down and eliminating over 4,000 jobs. It ended with U.S. Steel taking $1 billion charge to downsize, eliminating over 5,000 jobs. And in between, you had judges halting mortgage foreclosures in the county, all the regional institutions scrambling to retrain dislocated steel workers. So I think if you look at what was going on that year and where we are today, it really does show what a remarkable transformation we've made. And
Doug, you and I were both very young reporters in those days. You got here 2 years after the bottom, right? But we were still pretty deep in the hole in those days.
I got here July 5th of '85, right after the eyebrow-raiser provocative choice by Rand McNally to call us the most livable city, which I think was more to get readers than probably reflected the truth, because we really were still in tough shape. Back when Jim was talking about, in early '83, I looked up 212,000 people were in the ranks of the unemployed.
212,000?
Yeah, remarkable.
Wow. Compared to, say, what today, tens of thousands?
It's probably about 90,000 now, but we have a much larger labor force
against
now.
A larger labor force, yeah.
So it's been the efforts to turn things around. You know, the metaphor has been, how long does it take a battleship to turn around? Well, I mean, how long does it take a regional economy? And what we know essentially now is roughly 30 years from that kind of pit, those depths, to really the time now when we're really one of the nation's leading regional economies. You can see it in a lot of the statistics. Job growth over the last 5 years, housing price appreciation. In these measures, Pittsburgh actually leads all of our benchmark regions over the last 5 years. Lots of wages, you know, our wage growth, typically we were more moribund, now we're second highest among those 15 regions. In lots of areas, not to mention quality of life, cost of living, these kind of amenities related things that we get more press, but the actual regional economy has really made this dramatic turnaround.
Wow. Jim, how different is the economy today from what it was 30 years ago?
Well, it's much more diverse. Back then, you saw roughly a quarter of the jobs in the region dedicated to manufacturing. Mining was also a very large contributor. And services were about a quarter too. Now, we have a much more diversified service economy with the technology and the professional and financial and business services. Manufacturing is about 8% of the regional employment now, but it still remains a significant contributor to the regional economy in terms of gross domestic product, indicating the increases in productivity that have occurred.
Well, and speaking of the increases in productivity, this is a much more knowledge-driven economy and technology-driven economy, certainly, than was the case. And it really doesn't matter whether you're talking IT or manufacturing. It's a really different way of doing work than we saw 30 years ago.
Well, for years the media was kind of banging this drum about the young people leaving and all of that, which has not been true for many years, and we're actually attracting a disproportionate share of young adults. And what's interesting in terms of whether it's technology or education levels, we now have in that younger age group, I think, the third most highly educated workforce in the nation. So we really are attracting a different kind of workforce, certainly for a different kind of work. Even though we still have a lot of the traditional industry, the manufacturing, this kind of knowledge town element really has come into play. It's fascinating, of course, because when you have the unemployment rate under the national average for 5 or 6 years, that begins to attract people. And so Pittsburgh, with all of the rankings we've been getting, this is a place to come, not just because you can get a job, which is probably the driver, but because of all the good press and the kind of buzz we've been getting.
And Jim, did you say the workforce is a lot bigger than it was back then?
Yeah, the labor force as a whole, there's about 1.2 million people that are identified in the labor force here in the region. It was more closer to 1 million back then. So that's one of the interesting things, is even though as our population dropped over this period, our workforce continued to grow through it.
Women are a much greater part of the labor force than they were. Our labor force, as Jim said, is the biggest it's ever been. And it, compared to other regions, our labor force is growing. That's one of the reasons why our unemployment rate has crept up. We've added jobs over the last year and 2 years, but we've crept up slightly in unemployment because people are getting the word they're coming here, and we're getting a much bigger labor force, which is a good sign.
It's a great sign. Only a few seconds left, Jim, but I wonder, are we going to be able to continue to go at least above average? We're probably not going to continue to be a huge booming economy into the future, but do you think this above average performance is here to stay?
Well, I think we'll kind of level off just because we are a slower growing region, but I think what is critical is not the quantity of the jobs, but the quality of the jobs that we're creating here. Even through the recession, we continued to add jobs in higher paying sectors, such as the high-end services and the technology industries.
All right. Well, it's encouraging. It's a great position to be in, certainly much better than was the case 30 years ago. Doug Hoyk from Pittsburgh Quarterly, Jim Futrell from the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Next up, 5 issues important to our region's future that we've got to tackle in the new year. Stay with us.